Great, great. Thank you, Nora. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Ian Law. I'm a principal at Place Alliance Northeast, with offices right here in Schenectady, New York, as well as Amherst, Massachusetts. And on behalf of Capitalize Albany, I want to thank you all for joining us and welcome you to the Clinton Market Collective preliminary conceptual design presentation. You're joining us after really 2 solid weeks of very intensive design process, where we've worked with Capitalize Albany to kind of throw the kitchen sink at the site with all the different parameters and feedback and information that we've had, and then through a very iterative process, work our way to two concepts that we're going to share with you tonight. Before we get into the presentation, I'm actually going to hand it over to Ashley Moll just to give some opening remarks, and then we'll get right into the presentation. So thanks again for joining us, and looking forward to a great conversation to get your feedback toward the end.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, I'm Ashley Moll, as Ian said, Director of Economic Development for Capitalize Albany Corporation. As the owner of the property at 11 Clinton Avenue, we're the project sponsor. We've been working through this with the team of design consultants that you'll hear from. But before we go any further, we do have Mayor Sheehan on the Zoom meeting tonight, and I wanted to offer this opportunity to thank the mayor for her support of this project and of many of our projects that, all of our projects that we have taking place in the city. And Mayor, if you'd like to say a few words to the group, you're more than welcome to, but also if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Looks like she said she's good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you all for your hard work, and thanks to everybody who participated.
Okay, so thank you again for joining us. I also, before we move forward, just wanted to get some introductions out of the way. 3 of my colleagues, at least, I know I saw at least 3, are also on the Zoom call this evening. So first we have Capitalize Albany President Sarah Reginelli is joining the Zoom call. Sarah, please feel free to give a wave so people can see you. Vice President Tom Conoscenti is also on the call this evening, and our program assistant Nora Colhane is joining us. Nora's playing technical assistance on the webinar this evening, so you'll hear from her quite a bit, and she'll handle that quite well. And so just kind of really quick, you've witnessed some of the design presentations that we've done last week. So I don't want to go into too much detail on the DRI background this time, but just as a quick reminder, the City of Albany was awarded a Round 3 Downtown Revitalization Initiative Award from the state. This project was a direct result of that process. It was a priority project that came about through that process. It was one of 12. And so really quick, just wanted to, offer that thank you to Governor Cuomo and our state representatives from New York State Department of State. And I did see, I think he's still here, Dave Ashton from Department of State was on the Zoom. I think he moved on the screen, so I can't see him now, but Dave's here. So thank you, Dave, for joining us. And so really what we're looking to do for the Clinton Market Collective, and you've participated in a bunch of the sessions last week, and this sort of conceptual one wrapping up those sessions this week, trying to really create that community-based vision for a creative and collaborative space that welcomes residents to this major gateway through the city. And really we want a gateway landmark that's memorable and that people want to go to and actively participate in, and that you can see from afar and near and really enjoy. Just kind of wanted to give you that. And as you know from the rescheduling of the concept presentation, this site does have a number of challenges. It has a lot of potential. And the team of experts here on the call have really been working with us. They've been great to work through and around, some of the concerns with, the layout of the site and the utilities under the site. And I'm happy to say that what we're going to show you tonight, what Ian's going to walk you through, are some really incredible concepts that, honor the budget of the current project and really offer the opportunity for, potential future add-ons in a phase 2 as future funding could become available. And so with that, I'll turn it over back to Ian.
Thanks, Ashley. So real quickly, as Ashley mentioned, this project is funded by the Department of State, or New York State Downtown Revitalization Initiative, with a project sponsor of Capitalize Albany Corporation. And then we have a really remarkable consultant team that we've been privileged to work with in developing these concepts, and then hopefully graduating into a preferred alternative that take it all the way through construction documents in a viable and implementable phase 1. So for the agenda for tonight, we're going to give a brief project background. We know that we've been over this a few times with you, so we don't want to spend too much time. We're going to go over the market study highlights. Forward planning is our market analysis. Todd Poole from Forward Planning, unfortunately, is not feeling well, so I'm going to do my best to summarize, do the summary of the market analysis. Then we'll go into design goals and parameters. And then we're going to show concepts A and B, and then hopefully have a really engaging discussion with you folks. Okay, so in 2018, the City of Albany was awarded for the DRI for the section of the city referred to as Clinton Square. And after a 6-month planning project, as Ashley said, 12 projects were announced, and this was one of them. The planning process envisioned diverse pop-up retail installments by local artists, signature events, and enhanced pedestrian connectivity, and a venue for authentic local and regional experiences. So the market study that's been part of this project has followed to assess the viability of this as that market collective and a viable gateway into this section of downtown. So I'm gonna switch over to the market assessment and kind of review some of the key findings. Please forgive me for reading this piece because until an hour ago, someone else is going to be presenting it, but I'll go over the highlights. One real key piece has been that it really needs to be multi-level, flexible design elements. So civic spaces that offer terrace seating and performance or pop-up market zones. The reasoning for that is because of the grade change, and we'll go over that in a minute, but kind of taking one of our key kind of constraints, which is the 16 feet of grade change from Broadway to North Pearl Street, and figuring out how we can make that as flexible as possible. We want to make sure there's opportunities for artists, public speaking, small amphitheater, sculptures, and really extend the functionality and viability of the space. The other thing they said is we should have an iconic design element, an element that contributes to the sense of place. While the case study spaces were designed to honor and complement their surrounding neighborhood, each incorporates meaningful elements intended to surprise, delight, and ultimately become a calling card for the given spaces. So as part of their analysis, they looked at similar type spaces around the country that had similar elements, and that was one of the key things that they all had was a major iconic design element. And a gathering space for diverse community at all different times of the day. So this space really needs to have several personalities. It needs to be active during the work week and attract the lunch crowd. And then it needs to be a place that attracts local residents, downtown residents in Albany in the evening when they get home from work, at night, and of course on the weekends, and as well as for special events. They want to encourage the development of a Friends of the Market collective, as well as partnerships with nearby cultural and institutional venues that can promote community stewardship and cultural event synergies, which will help defray operation and maintenance costs. So a big part of both from the design side of things as well as the market analysis was having stakeholder interviews, which I'm I think several of you have been involved in those. And so we're going to go over some of the key highlights. One of the big ones that Ashley mentioned is a gateway into the city created for the community. So the Clinton Market Collective Project area should be thought of as a gateway to the city and region and created for its diverse community. A large majority of demand will be coming from downtown residents and workers. It is a significant audience that wants to spend time in this space. So too will area visitors. So if we make it a place that is great for the people of Albany, then it undoubtedly will be a great place for visitors as well. So that should be our charge, and then the rest will take care of itself. The balance between permanence and discovery. Programming and design should include a balance between permanence and discovery and repose and interaction. This reinvented space should create a niche for itself, injecting life and new use into the downtown. So we have to, again, strike a balance of things that feel permanent and grounded into the fabric of the city, but make sure that it's got the flexibility to constantly rejuvenate itself, so it can last for the long term. An inclusive balance, incubators for diverse local entrepreneurs. The creation of the Clinton Market Collective Project area as a business incubator for local entrepreneurs with an emphasis on diversity and inclusion is encouraged. Engaging familiar local vendors, preferably those without current storefronts, would help lower barriers to entrepreneurship while satisfying the demand for local products. An important consideration for such a model would be to make it accessible and affordable to such vendors. Clarity in rental agreements, both in process and fee schedule, would be essential. That was really, really interesting feedback. I think that's also part of the balance we have to strike, is how many are established businesses that potentially could occupy space here, as well as the incubator space, and striking that balance. And really the demand for on-the-go coffee, sandwiches, and drinks is feedback that we've received. With the lack of nearby food and drink options for neighborhood residents and workers, as well as theater goers and tourists, our project space could be ideal for the on-the-go version of coffee and sandwich top or rooftop bar without the rooftop. A market for the whole community. Consideration of local community needs is essential to the success of vending in our project space. Offering an alternative market for purchases of fresh food with SNAP benefits should be considered. Such offerings would need to be promoted with a public awareness campaign in partnership with local nonprofit groups like food pantries to educate and assist community members within the EBT system. An example of this, the Schenectady Farmers Market offers a successful model for such a campaign. Other feedback, coordination with nearby venues and events. Of course, we've got the development of the Skyway, which is gonna, bring up to upwards of 100,000 visitors a year. The pending transformation of Quackenbush Square and Tricentennial Park present three significant opportunities for programming and design coordination. Of course, as the presence of the historical Palace Theater and the folks that are going through our site to get to that important venue. And so the general consensus is we've got to understand what's happening all around our site so that our site can complement everything that's happening around it. And then creating creative partnerships with aligned missions. Again, I think that's an ongoing thing that makes tons of sense. Understanding all the different folks that could utilize this space so that we're benefiting local residents, local businesses, again, established businesses and startups. Okay, we want to give you a quick summary of our online surveys and some really important findings from that. 67% of the respondents live in the city of Albany, and 31% live in the capital region. More than half of the respondents work downtown, 52%. Anticipated visit times during the week, so 23% weekdays, primarily lunch. 23% weekday evenings are after work, and then 54% during the weekend. So that's what folks said how they imagine utilizing this space. Popular activities, respondents said, would bring them to the site were outdoor market space, food and drink vendors. Additional activities that were popular with respondents are temporary art installations, small music performances, and local artist workshops. And the top 3 passive features from respondents were trees, public art, and benches. Okay, so getting into our overarching design goals, we want to design a viable market that can be implemented with the available DRI funds. So we've got a very clear charge. We have available funding for implementation. So the phase 1 of this, we want to make sure is a viable space that can utilize those funds and accomplish these goals, and then add on to that with any potential opportunity for future funding. We want it to be a flexible market space for established businesses and startups, incubator for local artists, entrepreneurs, and cultural assets. Again, function as a gateway for downtown and increase wayfinding and connectivity. This is such a hub of activity. We really want this space to be a symbol of that connectivity, both physically, visually, and so that's a really important aspect of what the design is trying to accomplish. And in general, we're trying to really improve the pedestrian experience. We think in general, if we can make this section of Clinton Square very experiential, it will benefit residents, visitors, and the business community. So there's really 3 primary things that are critical in understanding this site that are both constraints and opportunities. I'll start at the bottom. As you know, this is a major hub into downtown with nearly 25,000 people a day passing by this. But the nature of this space really has it underutilized with its location. And so we really want to make sure we're taking advantage of its critical real estate and what it can do to help this section of downtown. And so we're very excited about that opportunity. So the real constraints on the site are, because of its historic, it was originally the original Clinton Avenue. And so as such, there's a tremendous amount of historic utilities located directly under our site. And they're major hub utilities. And so that really restricts us on what we can do to handle the other big constraint, and that is the 16 feet of grade change. So between Broadway and basically the intersection at Broadway and then the intersection at North Pearl, we have 16 feet. The other critical thing to note about that is the existing sidewalk along Clinton Avenue is not technically accessible. So that grade exceeds what would be considered accessible, which means to improve the connectivity from Broadway to North Pearl, we need to handle that accessibility through our site. And again, to maximize the flexibility of what this space can be, we really have to address this 16 feet of grade change creatively. But we got to do it without cutting because we can't get into the utilities. So as you're reviewing the designs, try to keep those constraints in mind because that had a lot to do with the nature of how they were laid out. So again, you're kind of catching us at the end of an intensive 2-week period, very messy and charrette process. Unfortunately, due to our circumstances, it had to be done remotely. But I think it accomplished the same goals of getting to a very preliminary stage to a pretty refined stage in a very short amount of time, with a lot of back and forth and great feedback from both stakeholders and the folks at Capitalize Albany. So with that, I'm going to jump in to the first concept. So concept A is structure that has 3 primary terraces, an open lower terrace. This is the one area on the site, this bottom southeastern corner, where we can cut. And as you're familiar with the site today, that's where there's a big berm that really prevents you both from visually and physically seeing into the site. So that's something that both concepts really wanted to tackle head on. And so we've really opened up the Broadway intersection here. So we have a lower terrace, a large middle terrace that we've tried to flatten as much as possible. We've maintained pretty much the existing entry here off of Clinton, with the handicap access that similar to what it does today, but it kind of would snake around and land at this upper area. And then the other real difference of what's out there today is right now there's about 5 feet of grade change between the sidewalk and the space across from the palace. And folks kind of have a cow path that cuts through the bushes there. We really wanted to engage the North Pearl intersection and create a nice accessible upper terrace there as well. So as you move through the space, there's some key features. We've got some nice terrace, kind of almost amphitheater style seating off of this nice open plaza that could accommodate a food truck, some local art. This concept was geometrically inspired by the existing park. And so we tried to take some of the geometry and angles found in that and just bring it up to date in a contemporary layout that really kind of honored some of those existing angles, but really opens it up and creates a much more visible and flexible space. And then at the end, you'll see on both concepts, the biggest transition of grade occurs in this southeastern corner from at the Broadway and Clinton intersection. So we have to get up anywhere between 6 and 8.5 feet of grade. And so instead of having big walls, we've tried to handle that with a couple different strategies of using stairs that can be both seating and kind of create a nice open view, but also to utilize the vendor space as modified shipping containers that could veneer those big walls. So we could add architecture without footing, so we're not penetrating and disrupting any underground utilities. So have some vendor space that adds some on-site architecture to help define the spaces and bring some activity for local vendors or artisans in a creative way to make that great transition. So taking a little zoomed in, again, key features of Concept A, nice open plaza at the Broadway Clinton landing across from the Skyway in Quackenbush Square. Big monumental stairs with stadium seating, as well as a conventional stair that brings you up. A performance area / shade structure that provides shade over that seating and as an overlook to the upper plaza, but also a great spot for a pop-up performance to be able to slide under there and have a nice, large, scalable plaza space. So being able to arrange movable furniture around this main market space to accommodate whatever size event. So a large event, you could have folks enjoying it all the way up to the theater, the plaza across from the palace. Again, opportunities for additional containers, but also the opportunity for food trucks to enter this primary space, tented vendors, push cart vendors, as well as, you know, pop-up performances. Another feature that we'd like to include, perhaps with some additional funding, is the introduction of some interactive water play, like a little pop jet that could be turned on and off depending on the programming, and provide great opportunities for lighting effects at night. So show you some quick imagery, and then we've got some nice 3D modeling that hopefully will do a better job of showing you how the spaces work. Again, in that lower plaza area, nice spots for seating integrated into the landscape. This is a nice example of how the combined stairway with sort of stadium seating could work in this area. And then a featured shade structure that provides some shade for the overlook and the stairs, but also to slide performances under. Lots of movable furniture, adaptive use of the shipping containers, and then a variety of seating. We want to make sure this is a place for all people, all ages and abilities. So sometimes the benching might be backless, but we want to make sure we have plenty of seating that has backs for our seniors, so they can sit and enjoy and people watch. So it's important that we integrate a lot of different types of seating, so we're having something for everyone. Again, this is sort of how the stair section that transitions up to the upper plaza could work. Opportunity again for food trucks to engage all the different plaza levels. And we want to now, so as we go through these models, I want to show it to you in sort of two versions. So we're going to have what we'll call Concept A Phase 1, which is the use of our available funding that we have now to, again, try to achieve a very viable and implementable Phase 1. And then I'll show you another view that shows how we might be able to add on to it should the opportunity arise to have future funding. So here's a view from North Pearl, looking east back towards Broadway. Again, nice open plaza, transition down to a nice open plaza, great spot for events to put a larger tent. Again, opportunity for food trucks to come in. And then nice market space plaza with lots of movable furniture, some adapted shipping containers for vendors, plenty of space for tented vendors to also set up for bigger programming events. And then the preliminary, we've allocated some money for that sort of shade structure, but the ability to add on to it to make it even better as part of a Phase 2. So I'm going to click one slide and demonstrate how that could look with some additional funding. So we've added a nice vertical sculpture piece to engage the upper plaza that terminates the vista from North Pearl, so that really has the ability to catch your eye from blocks and blocks away in the heart of downtown. The ability to add a pop jet into this primary plaza that can be turned and off for depending on the flexible programming. And you can see down at the other end, we've added additional sails to make that kind of featured shade structure that much more dynamic. Another view looking down, again, this is the Phase 1 with the implementation money that we currently have, and then how that space could be transformed with some additional funding. So again, expand on the shade structure, add some additional public art integrated into the landscape. Can always add more to the movable furniture. But the big difference is in this concept really are more public art or art in general, and the water feature. And then a view from the Broadway intersection. Here's where you get a really good chance of how we're dealing with that grade change. So we've sort of embedded the container. There would be a hidden retaining wall behind there that would just kind of veneer and hide. And then you kind of can see how with a conventional stair and then that sort of stadium seating gets integrated to be a nice overlook of this nice open plaza. We can take advantage of the roof and create a real fun overlook that could be connected to whatever this vendor is, to have a fun spot to see people coming into the city and coming off of the Skyway or from Quackenbush Square. And then when we add a little bit of elements, you can see how that shade structure gets that much more dynamic. You can see the pop jet in the background. And then from down low, again, with the implementation funding that we currently have, but that would be your view coming across Broadway. And then we're just adding a little bit more dynamic structure here, and can't really see the other things at the top of the site. But this concept A, I think we can accomplish quite a lot with our available budget, and it's really things like public art, the pop jet, which are the big difference. So now I'm going to move to concept B. Concept B is similar in its organization, as we have 3 primary plaza spaces. Again, opening up the Broadway intersection. Similar sort of stair treatment, a combination of traditional stairs and the stadium seating and integrated into the landscape. Nice large central plaza and a really expanded upper plaza on the North Pearl intersection. The geometry here we're really excited about, kind of nice clean lines. Here we're taking the idea, again, the utilization of the adapted shipping containers for vendor spaces, and we're trying to get more playful with that. So along this eastern edge, similar to the first concept, but just in a different arrangement, we're using a lower one that engages the lower plaza, that could service the lower plaza, but with the ability to have a fun overlook over top. Nice outdoor seating area here, so it'd be a great little spot for a cafe vendor to engage this lower plaza. And then a couple other upper plaza container vendors, but we're basically just picking up sort of the general shape of those as sort of a skeleton, and then getting really playful with what can happen under them. So whether we add some fun shade structures, we've got some areas where we've got sort of contemporary porch swings under them. We can slide movable furniture under there to service vendors to get you some shade and be on the perimeter of the site. The main space features a nice grove of trees, a little low platform stage that can be a flexible space for a performance or for just additional seating. We've also introduced a pop jet area in this plaza space as well. Stair seating and again some additional integrated benching into the landscape as we transition to the upper plaza. And similarly, lots of opportunities for public art engaged in the landscape. And then in the upper plaza, we can fit as many as 3 food trucks in that area, as well as tented vendors and food trucks in the main plaza, depending on the size or the programming for whatever the event might be. I kind of talked through a lot of these again, so I don't need to rehash, but again, a big real difference with this one is kind of using the language and being playful with it, with the framework and the geometry is the big difference. I'll jump to some of the imagery. Nice example in this photograph of how that stair and landscape could work. Again, how we can engage multiple levels to transition that grade at the bottom here, and really have these containers really open up and allow clear views through and into the site. and how just the structure of them can provide definition to the space and add a lot of flexibility. We promised that the pop jet would be more exciting than this image shows. It was more of kind of the relationship of how the movable seating with trees overlooking an activity like that could work. And again, the ability to turn that off when you need additional plaza space. And then how we can take those same kind of, the same structures of that kind of rigid rectangular geometry and get really playful with it by making it a fun shade structure or some contemporary port swings. Again, lots of opportunities for food trucks and tented or pop-up vendors. So we'll go through the same exercise of demonstrating what concept B could be with our available implementation funding, and then what things we could add to take the space to another level. So in this concept, again, we've got some public art, great opportunities for food trucks to be able to utilize the space, as well as tented vendors. And we do have 3 different containers. You can see 2 of them here in the upper plaza. But what's missing are those fun creative use of those sort of skeletons that you saw of the container spaces. So the swings and the pergolas, those would have to require some additional funding. And so you can see how that kind of added definition would happen with some future funding there. But again, great spot for food trucks to be able to pull in and utilize that space. We could add benching along that perimeter, as well as tented vendors. So I think we could really make it work, but the phase 2 piece, adds a dynamic element that is certainly a lot of fun and I think would be engaging. You can also see the pop jet would also be part of that phase 2. More of an overhead view of the phase 1 implementation plan. We have basically 3 containers in this first phase. This one does have the fun kind of 2nd story overlook that engages the upper plaza, while the vendor space would engage the lower. This one is up on the top, and then we have one in the corner, but again, lots of room for food trucks at all the different plaza levels, as well as tented vendors. This does include the stage and lots of movable furniture and adequate and attractive lighting. And then with the phase 2 funding, again, we would play off of that language and just get a lot more spatial definition on the edge and integrate some fun features into the site, the fountain, and then these fun pergolas, trellis swings, things of that nature, and of course, more opportunities for public art installation. From the Broadway intersection, again, get a nice example of how that stair combination really opens the view up and into the space, which is, one of the real issues with how the site works today is that berm really blocks your view and you don't get a sense of what that space could be, but I think this would really open it up and step it back into the site nicely. And then with the additional funding, you can see how get a fun pergola structure engaging the container here. You can see the fountain in the background. Again, this is a little better view, bird's eye view of how open and inviting this entry plaza would be. Again, we can get all of this in the first implementation phase, but then with some additional funding, we can really add on in an engaging way, introduce some water, as well as the fun elements on the perimeter. So that's how we've been really thinking about sort of the implementation phase and then a potential future funding. But we also wanted to talk with you about kind of taking things to an even another level. So this concept, when last week, one of our earliest iterations of it included a really iconic feature that we think would be wonderful. We can't currently afford it, but it's just something to consider because it could add such a dynamic, again, iconic element to the fabric of downtown Albany and really be a significant attraction. And so we should consider elements like that of things that we could, we have to weigh out, of course, operation and maintenance and budgets and how things like that would be paid for against what it would do for both the site and the surrounding area as an attraction. So an example of that would be, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you can kind of see in plan view. So this is a similar concept. Of course, this is before the model was developed, so these just look like boxes, but if you can remember how nice and open they are in this concept, you can imagine this water feature that really starts all the way up at the upper plaza across from the palace and really pulls you all the way through the site. That could engage the stairs and then be a nice feature at the bottom. So we haven't detailed it out. We know that it would be expensive. Order of magnitude, it could be as much as $1 million and probably range from 250 to $1 million depending on what level it could be. But I think what's important to consider is just the idea that something like that could be something that could be integrated into these concepts should there be the opportunity to add something like that. And we just wanted to throw that out there. But we think we've done a decent job of developing a couple alternatives that work with the available funding that we have, kind of have a realistic phase 2, and then the idea that we could think big and longer term. So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion. We could maybe go back to concept A, and we can ask the group the things that they liked about it, the things that they didn't like, anything, suggestions you might have, and we can do that as well for concept B. And then just hopefully have a nice interactive conversation. Ideally, what we're trying to help Capitalize Albany do is make an informed decision about what the preferred alternative is so that we can, transition these ideas into a preferred option to take into design development and ultimately into construction drawing. So thank you for your time and look forward to hearing your feedback.
So I think just on a technical note, so that we can get folks unmuted, if you have a question or if you have a comment on something, you can either mention it in the chat feature, or there's a reactions in your bottom menu. You can give us a thumbs up or a clapping, or you can give us one of those reactions and we'll let you know that'll let us know that you want to be unmuted for a question or a comment.
The mayor has a question.
Can you hear me? Oh, great. Okay. I'm zooming on my iPad, which doesn't have all the functions of when I do it on my computer. Thank you so much. I mean, this is really exciting to see. And, I think that it reflects a lot of hard work and input from people who participated in your virtual charrettes. And so that's great. And, I think, I really want sort of people who are a lot smarter than me and who've been involved in this process to sort of weigh the pros and cons of each. I'm curious about, from your perspective of seeing this space, the ways that we can also potentially reduce like noise from traffic, you know, as we're thinking about this, I just think that this is like really kind of ready for our Department of General Services and for some other folks to really be thinking about how infrastructure decisions that the city is making can positively or potentially negatively, you know, impact this plan and this idea. So, you know, I know we've done some work on Pearl Street. You know, we have designs to do other work as part of the DRI. And so I just think how those interact is something that'll be important for us to talk about. And, you know, it's funny you talked about your little water feature at the end, because when you looked at the design plan A, if you could go to the slide where you see it from Broadway and you're looking at it, do you have that slide? There. So, you know, where you have that seating space, which I think is a cool idea, the first thing I thought was like, oh, that would be really cool to have a waterfall right there. So, you know, for whatever that's worth, I think, you know, that when I looked at that, I was like, oh, if you were driving up and you saw a waterfall, you know, like one of those infinity, you know, kind of waterfalls there, that would be really kind of a cool thing to think about. That's it.
Love that idea. So I think those are really good points. You know, I think the point about noise is a good one. You know, it's certainly an urban space and we've done I think a better job of engaging it and opening it up both visually and physically, both at the top and the bottom, as well as the primary space. That might be the one benefit of the space being elevated in the middle, is you have some earth kind of separating you from the traffic, which is a decent absorber of sound. But I think, you know, those two things kind of don't work so well, opening it up visually and physically and then deterring the sound. So I think you know, things like water with the pop jet helps. Having music going in the space, whether it's just through speakers or live performances, of course, kind of can help drown out the natural noise that's going to be happening in and around the site. But I think, you know, I think we're going to have to celebrate that it's an urban space and make the best of it, but utilizing some, you know, some strategies that can help either distract them and have you not focus on them because you're so engaged in the experiential qualities of the space that you don't notice as much. But I do think that's an important thing to consider.
Aaron Kornman has a question.
Yeah, hi. Ian, first off, I wanted to congratulate you and thank you for your efforts. Obviously, you guys have done some great work. I'm curious, do you have other places in mind when years and the visions that you're showing? Maybe I need to move. The visions that you're showing here are reminiscent of a number of different parks in downtown Portland. So I'm wondering if I'm guessing you've been to Portland, you've seen some of the parks they have there, and maybe you're trying to emulate some of their successes.
Well, Aaron, that's a really interesting comment. Interestingly enough, Andy Bone, my business partner who is on the call, and I did visit Portland as part of a college trip quite a long time ago. But I think Portland's always been very progressive from a design standpoint and how they both engage topography, but also just the public realm in general.
Well, exactly. So, I was going to say the fact that you have to deal with a steep slope and accessibility reminds me a lot of Pioneer Courthouse Square.
Yeah.
And the way they built kind of a ramp through the middle of their amphitheater there.
Yeah, that actually came up several times as we were talking about it. We kept referring to the ramp and stair in Portland. So it's so funny that you said that. I don't know that we were, directly influenced by it, but maybe we were. It's a
Well,
good
anyway,
observation.
Congratulations on your work, and I look forward to seeing the final product.
Thank you.
So it looks like the mayor had to jump off, but we're grateful that she was able to make the time to join us. If anyone else has any questions or comments, you should be able to unmute yourself now. And if you're more comfortable putting the questions or comments in the chat, you can do that as well.
This is Dave Ashton. I had a question about the eastern end, the Broadway end. Could you talk a little bit about the connection to the Skyway on the other side of Broadway, and how this sort of, relates or plays off it, what kind of the synergies are, and also just sort of organizationally, you can imagine a family turning up on this corner with bicycles and, whatever their load is to go sort of across the Skyway to the waterfront, go for a bike ride or whatever. It's hard for me to sort of, I see a few people there, but it's hard to sort of get a sense for if there was more people gathering there, like what would it look like? Is it a good logistic space? Is it designed for that? Just that kind of thing I was curious about.
David, that's an outstanding question. So one of the real limiting factors about how the Skyway lands on that eastern side, so just off screen here to your left, is they don't have a lot of space. They're kind of landing almost right at the intersection. They're very limited in how much they can impact the Old English pub area there. And so from a staging standpoint, they really don't have that much real estate to do that. So that was one of the kind of really, I think Capitalize Albany shared a lot of the sentiments that you are expressing, that our designs need to be able to accommodate that, to just across the crosswalk there, have a spot where people could stage and sort of settle and land, whether they're coming from the Skyway or going to the Skyway. Our market analyst actually encouraged us, and again, in design development, we'll really dive into how we execute it, but we want to make sure that the designs have places. We even talked about, creative uses of some of the containers for storage, or places where you could lock up your bike or your baby stroller to be able to venture out a little bit and know that your stuff is in good hands, and that we could accommodate things like that. So I think we've tried to do what you're suggesting. We've tried to have a really ample spot to kind of sit and hang out and even gather. I think this concept B landing, I think both of the concepts have nice big open landing areas on the eastern edge, and then lots of seating. And then, of course, if you need to, you can expand up into the generous plaza, or, grab a bite to eat or something to drink, and rest, going to and from the Skyway. So I think that's a really good observation, and something that was really one of the primary goals that we wanted both concepts to achieve.
Great. No,
Ian,
thank you. Sorry.
I just want to jump. No, that's all right, Dave. I wanted to jump in on that point too. And, Dave, echo your sentiments and the sentiments of some of the other folks as well, that this team with Place Alliance has done just a masterful job across the board of trying to pack so many different things into what ultimately is a really tiny space, and solve pretty aggressive problems with really elegant solutions. And the Skyway landing is one of those, but also particularly in this concept, as you see the accessible path leading up between Broadway and North Pearl. One of the things that we heard over and over again in the Skyway is that grade change between Broadway and Pearl. You have people visiting this iconic element that's going to bring 100,000 people in, But if they are pushing strollers, or if they're not, you know, it's a family of cyclists that are not used to going up the steep slope on Clinton Avenue, how do you get them to explore the rest of downtown and provide a path to get there? And being able to work that into the concept on top of everything else that they did, it's been pretty amazing to watch that design process fit everything in.
Yeah, no, I was just going to finish up my comment to say this is really exciting. It's great to see. It's a space that, as a resident of the city, it is kind of a forgotten space, and this really livens it up and gives it purpose. I've always been interested in the sort of adaptive reuse of the containers, and I think that's really can be exciting and interesting. But one sort of question is, in relation to those, is I think they're great if they're activated and there's a business in there and something's happening. If there isn't a business in there, you know, is there a way to sort of do something with them that makes while they're closed, almost makes the unit public art, or something that makes it look purposeful and interesting, even if there isn't the lively activity that you would typically see around such a structure?
Yeah, that's another great point. I think, you know, one thing that they offer is a lot of wall space that could be turned into murals, or again, utilize their rooftops for overlooks, or just shaded seating. But the containers, when the businesses are closed, we agree it's really important that it doesn't make the space feel dead. It's gotta still be lively and engaging as a public or a civic space that still works when those are active and vibrant. So I think that's something that we'll have to continue to evolve as we get into design development, because surely that needs to always be a primary consideration. Great point.
Well, thanks for all your work on this. It's very exciting.
It's our pleasure. We're, you know, these projects don't come along very often, so it means a great deal to our team, and we're thrilled to be able to be a part of it.
If no one else is going to comment, I have one other thing.
Sure.
I find, looking at these concepts, I find the public art, my eyes drawn to the public art, and I find that very impactful. And that may just be a personal preference, but it's too bad that there isn't budget at the moment for the public art, because I do find that it's I don't know, my eyes drawn to that bird, and
Yeah, that bird.
elevation of the one at the west end in one of the scenarios. Like, that's just where my eye goes.
We so thank you for pointing that out. So as in both concepts, as part of the phase 1 budget, we do include some public art. So again, you're seeing some there. I think the bird is down at the bottom. So we have an allowance in. Andy, if you want to jump in and remind me what that phase 1 allowance is for public art, but both concepts do have a phase 1 public art budget, and then I think we double that for the phase 2, and of course that could just kind of keep going and going as we're hoping to always be, you know, refreshing the site. But we are trying to make sure that there's at least some budget allocation for this first implementation stage, because we totally agree with you.
Yeah, and sorry, this is Andy from Place Alliance. So for the public art, it's one of those things too that can grow. So, you know, we want to make sure that there's money in this phase 1 for it. I can't remember exactly what we held, but we tried to hold a decent lump and then doubling it or tripling it for phase 2. But to that point, like, you know, as long as it's thought out as to where it can go and how it interacts with the space, I think, you know, it gives the opportunity for that public art component to grow. And to piggyback on that a little bit too, we also think that it's important for the public art not to be static all the time either. So with the trellises, with some of the, the containers or some of the walls. It gives the ability to kind of screen and or hang certain art too, so that it's not just static. Every day you go there, it's the same art all the time. It gives the ability for kind of this space to evolve over the course of its lifetime, so that we can always have it be different for everybody that goes through it. It changes whenever that ends up being, but yeah, I think anything extra we can squeeze for public art, I'm always a huge proponent of.
I'm conscious of where we are at on time and everybody's evenings. So if anybody has other comments.
Bill Simcoe here. Just this corridor, which was Clinton Avenue previously, was the corridor that 3 30-inch pipes went through to provide water to the city from 1875 to 1931. And about in half of this site, there are 2 30-inch water pipes and a 24-inch water pipe that are active, plus the main sewer that comes down Clinton Avenue that's active. So those are underground utilities that the Albany Water Board has to maintain. So we are going to be concerned about things that are placed over the top of those utilities, and are still being able to get access to them and make repairs to them as needed. There's also portions of 30-inch water mains that have been abandoned on more of the easterly part of the site. But it'd still be important to try not to disturb them in some areas, because they may be part of what's helping to anchor the parts that are active. So, there's existing water and sewer utilities that are going to want to be used to tie into these and serve these pads, and then there's utilities that we have to be careful, because if we ever had to excavate, we wouldn't want to have to be destroying a lot of features.
Yeah, Bill, thank you. Thank you for those comments, and thank you for the time that you've given us to give us some feedback kind of through this design process. We really appreciate it. I think that as we get into design development and we're constantly kind of going through the back and forth of balancing budget elements with considerations like that, I'm wondering, Andy, just responding to what Bill just said, we may want to consider the areas where the water lines are, pricing at least doing those in pavers, so that we get, in the event they have to get pulled up, or it's not a tearing up, and could potentially, reduce the impact of requiring that access. But those are strategies, of course, that we're going to be working through with Capitalize Albany and the city, to make sure that we're doing the best we can with all of those important considerations.
You were considering that these are going to have plumbing,
So yeah, so several of the containers potentially we have allocations in for, for plumbing and electrical, at least water.
but at this point, there's no restroom facilities.
That's something that we've been, talking through, and could integrate as the design develops. There's been conversations about how a space like this really, could utilize a more permanent bathroom facility. But conceptually right now, we don't have it included, but it's something that we certainly need to keep discussing.
Yeah, our economic market analysis consultant actually, pointed out that extending the stay on site could be made possible by a more permanent, restroom solution. So, that's obviously, as Ian said, that's, an ongoing conversation. If the budget and, all the, if everything works out for that kind of thing, if that's the best solution for the dollars and for the project itself, that'll be weighed in.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
So I'll just make one last pitch. If anybody has any final comments or questions, to either submit them in the chat or just unmute yourself and shout them out. If you do think of something later on and you'd like to let us know about it, you can either email us at development@capitalizealbany.com, and I'll put that in the chat, or you can give us a call. I'll put all that information in the chat.
Hi, this is Georgette. It's been really neat to see how you've taken input from folks as well as budget constraints and still came up with a pretty cool 2 concepts. So I imagine that was extremely hard, and I understand the challenges of the site. A couple things. I would ask that you think about maybe additional electric, even if it's not near, maybe you probably already have, but we just are really challenged in our parks. Most of them don't have electricity. So to be able to do any lighting or like holiday lights or events with musicians or other things, we're really challenged by that. And then I actually really like concept B better, but I feel like phase 1 doesn't feel fully complete. And I totally get the phase 2 of that, or all the bells and whistles and the fun stuff. And I also like the landing on Broadway better in phase 1, because I feel like the container is more visually obvious. Like the one in concept B sort of is tucked around, and so it's not, you don't see it as much, I think, when you come off the highway. And really, if you don't have the phase 2 stuff, it may not draw your eye as much, or know that there's things for vending there. So that's, I don't know, that's just my thoughts. But I think you really, within the constraints and the challenges you have, it's very exciting. And so we're excited to partner in any way we can.
Thank you. Great comments. And that was another thing that, Capitalize Albany emphasized, as well as our market team, the need for electricity, for Wi-Fi, to be able to sit and, whether it's have a spot that you could, literally plug in and work from within the space to, again, extend that dwell time, as Ashley was referring to. We want to make sure we're considering all those things to really, make this of this time where that connectivity is so important. And again, maximize the flexibility of the space, so that you're not just locked into having a performance in one spot, or that vendors are only precluded to, being able to plug in one area. We've got to make sure there's lots of opportunities for that. So that surely will be accommodated.
Okay, I think it looks like we can wrap.
And I believe we're going to be able to make the presentation available on the website as well. So if folks need to refer back to it to take a closer look, there'll be an opportunity to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ian, for walking us all through this. And if anyone would like to see any of the parts of the process that occurred previous to this presentation, you can check them out on the Clinton Market website, which I'll also drop down in the chat here. And it is linked in the email that you received to attend this session. So I hope everyone has a great night and stay well, and we'll keep you in the loop as we move forward. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.